I've always had a burr up my butt about peace, but not peace as a absence of war or peace as a ceasefire or peace as a result of negotiations, but peace as an experience of the core essence of our nature. And when you feel it, it's real. And when you make it depend on deals, that's not real peace. Because somebody breaks the deal and the peace goes bye-bye.
Welcome to another episode of Entrepreneurs in Recovery podcast. I am so grateful that you are here today. If this is your first time here, welcome. Today's guest we've had on before. Today's guest is Udo Erasmus. And the reason we're having him back is because in the last episode, if you listened to a few months back, we got into a lot of topics and we didn't have enough space to cover all of them, not even close. So this second round, we get much deeper into some of these topics, including, of course, oils and essential fatty acids, diets, and even philosophical concerns and things that are along the spiritual realm. And I really hope you enjoy this podcast. Udo has a lot of wisdom to share. It was another longer podcast. And even during the podcast, you can see the sunlight changing here in Costa Rica from very sunny to very shady. And I didn't turn a light on. So you'll get to see me go from really light to dark. And that's just the life living in Costa Rica. But I really hope you enjoy this episode with Udo. It is round 2. Thank you all so much for listening. And if you would, give us a like and subscribe on YouTube if you like the show. And also leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify if you enjoyed this episode. Hi, Udo. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, glad to be on.
Yeah, round 2. Round
2.
Yeah, round 2. So last time you were on, we definitely felt, there was a lot more we could talk about, with your life experiences. And there were so many, we could have went on for hours. And so it just made sense to bring you back on. And it's been a couple months. So I'm glad you're back and we can dive into some of the things I'm still interested in learning about. Yep. And I know you have a new book coming out. So I think last time I didn't even know about this book. So now we can get into the book today. We'll get into some more myths about oils and essential oils and seed oils and all these different things. But I also have some other questions. So just happy to have you back, dive back in. And I know last time we also went, for those who didn't listen to the last episode, we went really deep into a lot of philosophical, a lot of deep concepts and ideas that I didn't expect to get into. So I'm excited to see where they go.
Actually, they're not concepts, they're realities, but we were using words to express them. But none of the stuff that I talk about, if it's not experiential, then it's just BS. So it's very important to understand, like when somebody who has an experience then tries to explain it in words, the words are not the experience.
Right. I agree.
Right? They point to an experience, but to chase the words, when you memorize the words, you don't end up having the experience. You have to get out of words to get into experience.
Yeah, the words fall short, especially if you're describing psychedelic experiences that are very big. You really can't.
For instance,
really indescribable.
But anything, even the taste of a carrot. You know, if you try to explain to somebody what a carrot tastes like who has never tasted a carrot, you can't do it. You cannot describe experience in words. But when you have the experience and the person you're talking to has the experience, then you have some commonality in experience. And then the words begin to make sense.
Yeah.
Right? But sometimes people think that if they get the words right, then the feeling's going to be right. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
You have to leave the words.
Right.
You have to leave the words, drop into the experience, and then you can maybe write poetry about the experience. Right?
Yeah.
But the poetry ain't the experience.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of times people have a lot of frustration because they try to describe the experience of love or a carrot or psychedelics. And then, they're often misunderstood because how could you put words into things that are oftentimes ineffable?
Exactly. Ineffable I think is a good word.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I guess one of the things I was curious, we could just maybe just get into first, just to start off with this new book that you have coming out, and then we can get
Oh,
into
yeah.
some other things. But your new book is called "Your Body Needs an Oil Change," and
Yeah.
I like that because we talked about that in the last recording. So tell me about
Right.
what that means. Your body needs an oil change.
Well, your body, they sort of came out of your body needs an oil change, just like your car. You got to get the dirty oil out and you got to replace it with clean oil. Well, we know that we do that for our car on a regular basis, but we don't think of our body that way. But your body needs an oil change. You've been putting dirty oil into your body for most of your life. And that needs to change because the dirty oil wrecks your engine, right? And so, but the book it's doing a couple of things. One is my book, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. It was written for people who are interested in health and people who have some science background. And we did very well with the book, but I always wanted to write one that was like just street level, really, really street level. I mean, in a way, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill is street level too, but it takes quite a bit of concentration. So I wanted to make a lighter version, and I never got around to it because I was traveling so much. So I never got around to it. So I finally got around to it, but I also used it to kind of make a bridge for the work that I'm going into, because I was for many years I was focused on oils as a contribution to the big picture of physical health. But then I got into digestive enzymes and probiotics and digestion issues, because I think that's the second most problematic area that humans have in physical health. And then I got into greens because that's really the foundation of all foods. Like a cow is made out of grass. So, sometimes we say, well, cow is just a more concentrated form of vegetable, right? So cows made out of grass, the meat that we eat either ate meat that was made out of grass or was made out of grass, right? So we're not far from the plants there either. And then I started thinking, okay, well, what's next? What else affects health? And the answer that I got back was everything affects health. And so I said, okay, well, we need to go into what is nature, what is human nature, what are the parts of human nature that need to be addressed, because we're not one thing. We're not just physical. We are physical, we are mental, we are energetic, we are awareness based. And each one of those four has a different nature and a different function and needs a different kind of attention and goes off in a different way in response to a different kind of intervention. So in Your Body Needs an Oil Change, I kind of introduced that topic so it heads in that direction, because that's really is where all my work is heading. I want to turn human nature into a teachable field, and then total health into a teachable field, because those are the two most important things we have. And it's the two things we have never done. We've never put that together in 200,000 years of living on this planet. How stupid are we? And it's because we don't know the nature of our own nature is why we have so many problems, because we create them from our disconnection from ourselves. And then we get into the reactions of everything on the outside, instead of bringing the peace and the love that are the core of our being into every situation in the world. How would that work if 8 billion people did that? I think it would be pretty cool. And so that's Your Body Needs an Oil Change is a more of a street version, kind of a little bit of an update as well.
Yeah, it sounds like you might have added some spiritual stuff to it too. Maybe some.
Yeah, and a bridge into what you're calling the spiritual stuff.
Yeah, awareness, consciousness.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Was that in your first book? Was this stuff about?
Only in the last chapter I talked about love.
Okay. Cool.
But no, I've been working on that now I came out of the Second World War. I've always had a burr up my butt about peace. And, but not peace as a absence of war, or peace as a ceasefire, or peace as a result of negotiations, but peace as an experience of the core essence of our nature.
Yeah.
And when you feel it, it's real. And when you make it depend on deals, that's not real peace, because somebody breaks the deal and the peace goes bye-bye. Right?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. I'm excited about your book. I definitely I want to read that, check that out. And is that coming out soon? Is that coming out?
Yeah, they're just doing a little bit of formatting, and then it's going to end up on my website.
Yeah, because one of the things, like, there's a lot of things we can get into about health and essential oils and all the things, your life's work. But I really am curious. Last time we talked about a little bit of this religious trauma that you've experienced in your life, you know, with early experiences with the church. And I'm kind of curious what kind of imprint that has left overall, because I actually did a podcast myself, a solo it wasn't a solo podcast. I brought someone else on, but we talked about the impact of this and your belief systems. And you, even in your quotes, you have quotes like this: nothing you believe is true. Everything you believe is made up. The bigger the fear is, the bigger the God is to protect you from it, or the bigger your belief is of the God. So I want to talk a little bit about this. Let's get into some of your early experiences and what created this foundation of your beliefs today.
Okay. Well, it started with the war, because even as a little kid, I was 2.5 when we were refugees, and I got orphaned and all of that stuff. Right. And so I've always, like, when I was 6 years old, I was thinking, there must be a better way to live than this. So that's always been an issue for me. So it's not like I was trying to run away from pain. I was actually trying to chase something better. So that's kind of interesting, because most people sort of hold back, and then they go forward when the whip starts to snap, right? And then when the whip is not snapping, then they lean back again. But if you get excited about a possibility, that keeps you going. So it's actually a better way to live, chasing a carrot rather than running away from a stick. And it was the war that started that. But then it was like that switched from, I don't want war, to there must be a better way to live, and I'm going to find out how, right? And then I went into science because I wanted to know what life is, right? Biology means the study of life. So I studied biology. Of course, it's fascinating because everything that's alive, what makes this planet special is it has life on it, and so many different ways and so many different things going on. It's like fascinating. But I never found life in biology. We studied form and function. We never studied life. And I was disappointed because I thought that they would deliver what they promised, right? And then the same thing in psychology, study of soul. I thought soul, that must be something. I have never seen a soul. I don't know what it is. What is a soul? But it must be, and then they have a whole field dedicated to it. So there must be something to it. Yeah, I want to know what that is. Well, they didn't study soul in psychology. They studied beliefs, thoughts, beliefs, emotions. Then I did the same thing in medicine. They called it healthcare. I wanted to know what health is. So I was looking for the good thing, right? The good, medicine does not deliver health. It delivers disease management. They're focused on disease. They don't even know what health is. They don't even have a definition. And I found that out by talking to the dean. So I went back into biological sciences. I didn't find it in genetics. I didn't find it in biochemistry. Those were all very interesting, and I learned stuff. But that essential thing, and I think probably every human being wrestles with some essential thing. They don't maybe put it in the kind of words I put it in. Maybe their heart aches, or maybe they just feel uneasy, or maybe they feel like they're not good enough, or they've lost something, or there's still something missing, or everybody has that. I sometimes do a conversation with people, an interactive conversation called the thirst of the heart. And I call the thirst of the heart this uneasy feeling in the chest, right? I've never met anybody who didn't know that feeling, because there's so many things that trigger it. And they put you back to the thing, yeah, there's something is missing in my life. And the truth is, what is missing in my life? I'm missing in my life. And why is that? Because my focus is always out there in the world of change, attracted to it, because that's part of what we do for survival. But my focus, generally speaking, if I'm living the normal life, my focus is never in the space that my body occupies. So it occurred to me in biology, I said to my lab partner, we should really study ourselves, because we have form and function and life all together. We don't have to kill ourselves to get to know ourselves. But then I didn't know how to do that, and nobody was doing that when this was like 1962, right? And I didn't get to it until much later. The LSD was my door opener into the inner world, because I realized that what I was looking for on the outside is something I'm only going to find on the inside. It's already on the inside. I'm just not looking there, right? It's like if I want to know who I am and I always just look at you, I'm never going to find out who I am, right? Maybe if I want to know who I am, I need to spend time with myself. And so, and then I looked at all that kind of stuff. People were doing Scientology, and people were doing transcendental meditation, and there was quite a bit going on in the early 70s, and I listened to some of it, and none of it made sense to me. And I ended up then going to the red letter edition of the New Testament, where everything Jesus says is in red ink, and the rest of the Bible is in black ink. Because I got to a point where I said, if I were to model myself after someone, who would I model myself after? It wasn't my parents. They were so shell-shocked from the war, they weren't my models. It could have been, I guess, but I didn't see them as my models. And my answer to that is the one person who was really interesting, who seemed to live a life of poetry, was Jesus. And I got to a point where I said, I want to know what he felt that made him live like he did and talk like he did, and how come they're still talking about him 2,000 years later? There must have been something there, and I want to know what that is. And then I got to, I don't know if I told you that story. I got in with a group of Christians who came up from California.
A little bit, but yeah, you can tell it again.
Yeah, and then I thought, well, I'm going to hang out with these guys. They must be trying to figure out what I'm trying to figure out, on the same search, on the same quest, right? And so, I spent an evening together, and we will all tell our stories, what we're doing and what we found, and it would be a super enriching evening because everybody's experienced something. So we would all be talking about our experiences and our learnings. So off I went and sat down at this table, and this guy swooped into me, in next to me, and I said to him, I didn't introduce myself. I just looked him in the eyes and I said, it must be possible to see God and live. And he, I thought this would be the beginning of a deep, beautiful, meaningful conversation. But that's not what happened. He jumped up and jumping around the room, his arms flying around his head, screaming at me, "You're from the devil, you're from the Antichrist, get out." So off I went, slinking out of there. And I was standing on the sidewalk and I was thinking, I haven't seen God. Maybe I'm supposed to ask I'm not supposed to ask this question, because we were told as kids, they're questions you shouldn't ask. And I got really confused. And so I decided to hitchhike into nature, because that's where I used to go to clear my head. And in the middle of the night, I woke bolt upright on a beach that was completely deserted. And there was a being made of light. Did I tell you that story?
Yeah. Tell it again, though.
Yeah. Okay. And the being embodied a message. No words, no label, The message I could put words to. I am come not to judge, but to love. Oh, I don't know a more succinct encapsulation of the message of Jesus. I am come not to judge, but to love. In other words, I am come to love. In other words, I am love. Okay, yeah. That's pretty clear. And all of my desperation was completely gone. There was my answer to the question of what did he experience? And then and so I have never had a question about what it was, except a couple more things. One of them is, kingdom of heaven is within you, he said. He is said to have said, I don't know if I wasn't there, right? And seek first the kingdom, and everything else will be added unto you. But I didn't, I sort of passed that over like most Christians do. They memorize the words and they don't get the meaning, right? And so this became a memory. It started to become a memory, and I noticed that with time, this profound experience that I had in the middle of the night just became more of a memory. And I was like, damn it, I want to stay in that experience. I want to live in that experience. And that took me to a kid who was 14 years old, who said, when I heard him, he said, the peace you search for in the world is within you, and I can reveal you that peace. And that, I didn't think he could, because I was 30 by that time. He was 14, right? But he definitely said what I was interested in. And so I checked it out, and he showed me a method, and I've been practicing the method for over 50 years.
What was the method?
Oh, he calls it self-knowledge. And it's just a way to
pamphlet.
No, it's a method. It's a method he teaches in a session, right? And and it's not a book because it's a practice. It's not a bunch of words you memorize. It's a practice. Okay, and the way he describes this is says it's a way of bringing your attention that's always going out to bring that attention inside. Right, and that fit with all my experience, that what I'm looking for is inside of me. Yeah, he also said the peace you search for is inside of you. It's already there. It's not like you have to create this stuff. It's like it's already there. It's already part of you. So how come you don't know this part, this thing that is peace, that is really nice? That's already inside of you. How come you don't know that it's in there, right? And why is it? Even though the master said, this one and others, right, say, well, the kingdom of heaven is within you. The peace you're looking for is within you, right? And look and find that first. That means you have to spend time with your focus inside of your own being, right? Because if it's within you, that's where you're going to experience it. And so that came later, because I hadn't really figured that out, but it came because I liked the experience. I wanted more of that experience.
Yeah.
And then he basically said, if you're willing to commit, he wanted people to spend an hour in that sitting still, going in there. I couldn't even sit still for 5 minutes. I was that mind-driven, agitated. And so it took me a while to get to the idea of, so it was hard at first. And then I would say, oh man, this is so hard. And then one day I realized, gee, am I making it hard because I'm saying it's hard, or is it really hard? Gee, I wonder what would happen if I said, oh yeah, this is easy. So I started, it was hard, but I said, oh, this is so easy. And it became easy. So I was actually talking myself into making it hard because of my attitude to it. Right? Because I wasn't used to it. And so then it became easy. And then with time, it becomes easier and easier, and you go deeper and deeper. And there is, in the middle of a world that is self-destructing, I don't think it's fair not to say it that way. We live in a world that is self-destructing. I think we are in the midst of a change of civilization. You know how civilizations crash and then are replaced by new civilizations. I think we're in it. So polarized, not based, not heart based, all just opinion based, stupid opinions in most cases. Wars that are taking place that we are putting into perfect peace. So there's a lot of things going on. And in the middle of that, people get really, really distraught and they get like overwhelmed, anxious, fearful, depressed. Oh my God, how do I deal with? Oh my God, here comes another. Oh Jesus, right? In the midst of that, there is something inside of a human being, every living human being, whether they're on death row for mass murder, or whether they're sitting in government, or whether they're sitting in Congress, or they're sitting, they're a doctor delivering babies. Every human being that's alive has within them a peace that is unshakable and an unconditional, empowering love that is their life in every human being. And imagine how helpful it is when you're living in a place where most people are disconnected from that and are doing really crazy stuff because of that. Imagine that you can actually sit in perfect peace and unconditional love in the midst of all of that stuff going on. And imagine that because you can sit in that peace and that love, you can actually be an influence in the direction of unconditional love and peace for the world, for your sphere of influence, for the people for the places you live, in the jobs that you do, in the relationships you have. But you can't do that if you haven't done your homework. And the homework is coming home to yourself, letting go into that peace, letting go into that love, feeling it, enjoying it, and then dragging it into the world with you, whatever you're doing.
So a lot of the conversations we have on this podcast is, talking about people and their struggles, right? Their trauma, their addictions, the different things that are the attachments, their wounding, and that really blocks them from the things you're saying, right? Because if we could experience the peace you're talking about, we have these life experiences starting from childhood most times that disconnects us from what you're saying. So how does someone, in your opinion, have that experience where they can be sitting with that?
Okay, there's a couple of things I would say. The first thing is trauma does not make the peace and the love within us go away. Trauma pulls our focus to it. And when your focus is on trauma, you're going to either experience trauma or experience the memory of trauma. And most of the people who are preoccupied with trauma are living in memory of trauma. I know that's because war was my trauma. The war ended when I was 2.5. When I was 26, I was still bitching about it. Well, what do you expect? I was born in a fucking war, right? Right? The war was over for like 24 years. I was still living in the war in my head, in my memories, and bringing it up. What do you expect? What do you expect? What do you expect? So the issue with trauma is trauma will trigger heartache, but will not cause heartache. Heartache is a normal thing for every human being because heartache is the cause of heartache is our disconnection from ourself, our focus shifting from where the love and peace are within us to something else. And it could be a job, or it could be a conflict, or it could be a trauma, anything else out there. And the traumas are always interactive, right? I fell off a bicycle and my knee banged on a rock, and I opened up my knee right on my patella. I still have a big scar there, right, and bashed it to the bone. Ooh, that hurt. Oh man, did that hurt. Definitely trauma, right? And so my attention was drawn to that. And even now, just like I can bring it up, I can remember what that pain felt like. It was intense, right? While it's healed, I have a scar, I don't have to focus on that. And the thing is that, of all the freedoms we have, we really only have one freedom, which is where we choose to put our focus. So you put the focus on trauma, and sometimes it's habitual. It's easy to do because you've done it so many times. You put your focus on trauma, and then you're going to be living your trauma personality. What if you chose to put your focus everywhere but the trauma? So you have a lot of choices of where else to put it. I got a clock on the wall. I could focus there. I got a drum over in the corner. I could focus there. I could focus on my feet touching the ground. I could focus on you on the picture, blinking your eyes, right? So we can focus in a lot of different ways. And some of them are not as habitual as the trauma we focus on. But then you want to ask yourself the question, if you can focus in places other than your trauma, that is your habit, what would it take? And what would it take for you to make a better focus as habitual as you've made memory of the trauma? Or you could say, well, what's the payoff for dwelling on it? In our society, trauma gets attention. People don't give you attention for living in peace and love. Nobody gives you attention for that, right? But if you go and beat somebody up on the street, you get attention, right? So we've actually created something that makes it easier to live in memory of trauma, but it doesn't make your life fulfilled, and it never will, and it never can. You get some perks out of it. You get some, maybe less will be expected of you. Maybe there's some payoffs in terms of they're there, somebody patting you on the back. Maybe who knows? Maybe you can get some money for it, even, and depending on what the particular issue is. But we weren't. I don't think the universe made us so we could live in trauma all our life. I think we were put here to enjoy the gift of being alive.
Yeah.
What all that entails. And so for me, the issue with trauma is that how do you get from your focus on trauma? What is it going to take for you? And it might be different for everybody what it'll take. What will it take for you to bring your focus back inside to the peace and the love and the life that cannot be traumatized, and we're never traumatized and are not affected by any trauma that happens in the interactive world? And then to begin to live your life from life for life again, because that to me would be the cure of trauma. Not that the trauma goes away, not that what happened goes away. No, I still got a scar on my knee, right? And I could still go into the anxiety that I felt as a 2-year-old in a war where everything was crazy. But I have a choice now. And I've been practicing that other choice long enough. And I like it better so that I spend more time there. But I can always go back to it. The memory will always be there.
Yeah.
But you get to decide. You get to choose where your focus goes.
Sure. And I think that's sort of the guess, in the last 60-something podcasts, is a lot of people who are, they have their own ways of healing trauma. That's the important thing, is there's so many ways to do it, right? Some people do it through meditation. Some people do it through talk therapy. Some people do it through psychedelics. Some people do it through even religious experiences.
Yeah, even
So
sports. People do it through
sports,
sports, and people do
diet,
it through
right?
adventure, and
Yeah,
anything that takes your attention
sure.
elsewhere is at least a partial or a short time cure of trauma, right? But then you come home and you can always go back there. But then the question is, well, how would you like to live?
Yeah,
And I definitely, the trauma was not that fun. I didn't get a lot of perks for my trauma. So that made it maybe a little easier for me to not dwell on them. But honestly, the feeling of being present in my own space is so fulfilling. It is so fulfilling. It is the most fulfilling thing there is. More fulfilling than the relationships I have. More fulfilling than the outside interests I have.
yeah,
And of course, that's what all the really wise people always said. The best thing, what you're looking for is inside of you. The best thing you've got, better than anything you'll ever have on the outside, is something you will always have on the inside. How fortunate are you? How lucky are we that it was designed like that? Because it could have been designed different. But that's
yeah.
how the universe designed human nature.
Yeah, I'm glad we went there and sort of picked up where we left off in the last episode. I'm curious now to get into the physical health side, because a lot of the healing too comes from physical healing in your body, right? Because if you're sick and you're not well, none of this matters, because you're not going to believe that it's possible to have these experiences if you're sick, if you're unhealthy and you feel really shitty about yourself. And that's, many people come to healers and they come to different types of healing modalities, and especially diets and fad diets. And that could be so many things, the medical medium, it could be the whole foods diet, it could be carnivore diet, whatever it is that they believe is going to help them. But the point is that, let's talk about some of the physical health, the work that you've done. And then I want to get into some of the questions I have with oils because I didn't get to ask them last time. So,
so again, you can be sick physically and you can still feel peace inside.
Sure.
It's 100% possible, because the peace inside will never be affected by anything mental or physical or environmental or social or emotional. Will not be affected. So I think it's important to make the distinction that there's all the things that change, where all your hurts and all your disappointments and all your losses come from. And there's something that will never, Krishna said one time, even in your darkest hour, I will not abandon you. Wow. What is it that never abandoned you in your dark hour? And I one day I was sitting on the porch and I said, wait, I've been bitching about the war. And the whole time, through all that drama and all that trauma, something took perfect care of me, because here I am. I could have died. I could have got killed. I could have had a bullet through my 2-year-old brain, right? Something took perfect care of me. Made my breath come in, made my bowels move, made me know when I'm hungry, when I need to drink. Something is taking care of every human being, no matter what their story, their history, their trauma history is. Something is taking perfect care of you right now, right? How about giving that some of your focus and maybe a little gratitude, right? That was a big insight for me, right? So you can be sick and have trauma and still have peace. It'll be easier, of course, if you don't have trauma and you're not sick, but then you're not likely to be looking for peace. So that's part of the dynamic of how we get to better places, right? So what I did in 1980, I got poisoned by pesticides, and it happened because I created this one. This was a self-made learning opportunity, you might say. I got married. We had 3 kids. My marriage broke up. I was really upset and I wanted to kill something. And so I took a job as a pesticide sprayer, because pesticides is stuff that we make whose only function is to kill living things. So I sprayed weeds and I sprayed insects and I sprayed funguses and all kinds of stuff. Really careless. And after 3 years of doing it very carelessly, I got poisoned. So I went to the doctor and said, "What do you have for pesticide poisoning?" She said, "Nothing." So we make them, we spray them, but we don't actually have a way of fixing the mess that we're making. So then I'm okay. Well, I guess I'm on my own. And my palms were sweating because I found out afterwards that some of what I sprayed causes cancer. Well, I wasn't looking forward at 38 to dying of cancer. I was like, not really. So what do I do? Well, yeah, do the opposite of what you did to get it. That should be your cure. So number one, you stop spraying. That's like pretty obvious. And then I started looking at, basically your body turns over every year. Like 98, like, you look Jesse Harless, right? And if I see you not a year from now, your name will still be Jesse Harless. But 98% of the atoms in your body that are there right now that you call Jesse Harless, they'll be gone, removed, and replaced. And you'll still be called the same name, but you're actually completely almost a different person. Every year, 98% of the atoms in your body turn over, which means if something goes wrong in your body that has a physical origin, you need to raise your standard. And so that's what I figured out. So I need to raise my standards. So then I went into the research, and I was researching everything, all the essential nutrients, of which there are 42, minerals, vitamins, amino acids, fatty acids, 42 of them. And I just started looking at digestion, and I started looking at all the stuff that, what it takes to make a body, what it takes to maintain a body, how to heal, anything to do with food and nutrition. Food and nutrition isn't food is nutrition. Nutrition and health, nutrition and disease in Medline, in the big database of research. And it was all very interesting. A lot of it I didn't know because I'd studied biology. You learn a lot about health, but not specifically nutrition. So I got stuck on fats because it was really confusing. Because on the one hand, they said, omega-6 is an essential nutrient, and the next study said omega-6 gives you cancer and kills you. And these days, a lot of people are saying don't use seed oils and don't use omega-6s because they're toxic. And they don't understand that it's not the omega-6s that are toxic. It's the damage we done to these sensitive molecules in the way we treat them, both by frying, but even by the industry when it makes those oils. And they treat them with sodium hydroxide and phosphoric acid, which are really corrosive, and then bleaching clays, and then heat them to frying temperature for half an hour to clean them up. And they do that for shelf life, but they damage about 1% of the molecules. So a half to 1%, depending what kind of oil. And then when you I called them and I said, why do you do this? It's doing damage to the oil. Why do you do that? I'm trying to get healthy, right? He said, well, part of the reason we do that, we can get rid of half of the pesticides in the oil by heating it to frying temperature. And my head blew off because I didn't even know there were pesticides in oils at that point. We never learned that in university. So I said, why didn't you start with organically grown seeds? And then he got mad at me because I was questioning it. But I guess nobody had ever asked him that question. And so what I realized is the damage that we blame on oils should be blamed, the toxicity that we blame on these oils and the omega-6s should be blamed on the damage done by industry to them and damage we do to them in the frying pan. And so I said, okay, I can't get healthy on oils that still have half the pesticides in them and that 1% of the molecules are damaged. which, by the way, is like over 1 million damaged molecules for every one of the body's 60 trillion cells, like 60 quintillion damaged molecules in a tablespoon of oil. So, you know what? We should make oils with health in mind. And so I developed a method where we start with organically grown seeds, so no pesticides to deal with. We protect the oils from light, from oxygen, from heat, which damage them very rapidly. We put them in glass because plastic swells when you put oil in it, and then plastic leaches into the oil. We put them in a box to cut out all the light, because the light that goes through the bottles will kick electrons out of orbit and create free radicals that then have chain reactions, on average 30,000 before it settles down again. And there's like squillions of light rays going through a bottle. So we said, okay, we need to take these precious, sensitive molecules and protect them. And so we built a very, very tight system to make oils with health in mind. Then I found out that omega-3s are essential, not just omega-6. I was poisoned in 1980. That was established in 1981. Omega-3s are 5 times more sensitive than omega-6. 99% of the population doesn't get enough for optimum health. And I said, oh my God, if we could make them with health in mind, and we could bring them back into the population, we could help almost everybody, 99% of the population. And so we built that. Took us, I started in 1981, and we got it done by 1986. 1986, we developed flaxseed oil, which is the richest source of omega-3. Not a balanced oil. I became omega-6 deficient on it. And then we developed a blend in 1994 that has the ratio between them right, because they compete, and that has both essential fatty acids made with health in mind, organic, in the right ratio, in glass, refrigerated at the factory, refrigerated in shipping if it's longer than 2 weeks, refrigerated in the stores, refrigerated at home, added to foods after they come off any heat source. Never, ever, 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 ever used for frying. And in fact, frying is the dumbest thing we've ever invented to do to food if health is our goal. You know, nature's mandate was fresh, whole, raw, organic. Frying is way out of line.
Frying. Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the frying for a minute, and then we'll, if you don't mind, just to So because I think a lot of people, you know, for their whole life, or their parents have been frying with olive oil and different oils. So what let's explain to people why frying with oil can be damaging, and then what is the alternative?
Okay. Well, so first of all, these oils are sensitive to damage by light, oxygen, and heat. When you put them in the frying pan, light, oxygen, and heat damage them all at the same time. Unless you're frying in the dark, in which case it's only oxygen and heat, right? But so you're taking molecules that are really sensitive, and you're extremely damaging them. And they're already damaged to begin with, maybe 1%. But then when you put them in the frying pan, you probably got to multiply that number by 3 to 6 times. That's the damage the frying does. And what should you do instead? Well, if you want to live in line with nature, because health was invented by life as an adaptation to living in nature, well, nature's mandate for every creature that eats fresh, whole, raw, organic, local, seasonal mostly, seeds and nuts and beets, of course, you can put in a root cellar, or you can dry and keep. And mostly for humans, probably plant-based. That's nature's mandate. So when somebody says to me, well, if I can't fry, well, what can I do instead? Well, even if you cook in water, which is the next step you should go back to, that's not as bad as frying, but it's still way out of line with raw, because you destroy the enzymes that do 60% of the digestion of raw food for you if you chew them properly. You kill the probiotics that you find on raw foods in nature. That's where the animals get them from. They don't take supplements of them, right? So you destroy those two. You also destroy, in part, some of the more essential, some of the more sensitive vitamins and amino acids. And you lose quite a bit of the energy that is present in raw food. When you cook it, you actually just lose that energy. That's life energy, right? So what should you do? You should go from frying in the direction of fresh, whole, raw, organic, local, seasonal, plant-based. That's what common sense and research would say, right? And then people say to me, oh, yeah, but I love the taste of fried food. No, you don't. I don't own your tongue, but I know you don't, because it's an acquired habit that you mixed up with mother love, because your mother fried foods for you, loved you, but fried foods for you. She was bamboozled into doing that by an oil industry that was not interested in health, but was interested in shelf life and sales. And they said, and that said, hey, they're using water for cooking. What if we could use them? What if we could get them to use oil? And they then marketed that. And olive oil was not used for frying traditionally. It was added to foods that were cooked in water, then the water dumped, then the oil added for flavor and for better absorption of oil-soluble nutrients. That's how the traditional use of olive oil. So, so frying, no matter what you say about it, even now people are saying, oh, hard fats for frying. Yeah, if you're going to fry, use hard fats. Well, you get less damage when you use hard fats, but hard fats will still burn your food, still turn it yellow, then brown, then black, then into smoke. And so you're changing molecules that nature made that are good for you into something that never existed in nature that is toxic for you. So when you fry in hard fats, you're still making foods toxic. And I have a slogan: fried foods, fry health; fried oils, fry health; fried fats, fry health. And if you understand that, and you don't want to fry your health, because you have to pull out the frying pan and you have to put that stuff in there and you have to turn on the heat. So you're deliberately frying yourself. You're frying your health when you fry foods. And there's no way around that. There's, there's no creature in nature that eats fried food.
All right. So it sounds like to me, what you're saying is a raw diet without any type of cooking would be the optimal diet for health.
As long as it's not contaminated. Sometimes foods get cooked to destroy the microbes that contaminate it. But yeah, if you get it fresh in your garden, if your garden is not polluted, it would be a really good idea to have a garden and go outside and, just like we did as kids, eat the hearts out of the cabbages. We used to fold the leaves out and then eat the heart out of the cabbage, or pick the tomato and just wipe it on your pants and eat it, right? Or pick the apple or whatever it is, right? Or, take leaves. We have a garden, so I go to the garden. I pick leaves off of the kale plant and I just eat them, right? No sauce, no mayonnaise, grass without mayonnaise, right? So that's, again, from a health perspective. And my view of my job is that I'm here to tell the truth. I'm not here to force you to make any choices, but I want to give you the truth that you can use effectively and safely to make better decisions for yourself to improve your health.
So I have experience in the raw food diet. Many people really, it's really challenging for them to eat 100% raw. So raw fruits and nuts and seeds.
Yeah.
And most of the people don't eat 100% raw on this
Yeah.
earth.
Yeah.
So I have done that. I actually did 1 year, 100% raw diet, no
Hmm.
cheating, 100% the whole time. And,
Yeah.
I lost weight. It took
Hmm.
a while for me to get used to the amount of calories I needed to eat per day. But anyways, the point is that I did it. And it's, for people to do that, even to go 1 day going raw is extreme for them. So
Yeah.
how is there a sustainable model for health for the world we live in and eating raw?
Well, I think that what you have to understand is raw is hard for people because their digestive system has degenerated because they got used to eating foods cooked and messed and processed and all of that. And so if you're going to head in the direction of fresh, whole, raw, organic, you do it step by step. You go from
Yeah.
frying to cooking, from cooking to raw. You do from only eating an apple raw, maybe eat apples and cabbage raw, right? So you do it in small steps because you have to rebuild your digestive system from being used to cooked foods or fried foods to raw foods. And that takes some adjustment, and your digestive system will accommodate that. It's just like when you do exercise, you get sore, but you build muscle. Well, in a way, if you look at digestion, it's similar. If you eat too much raw, that that may not feel that good unless you can add digestive enzymes, probiotics to it. That can help with digestion issues. But you do it gradually. It's like one thing. Maybe a bigger salad. Maybe that's where you start.
Right.
And
Yeah.
maybe and at some point the whole thing becomes a big salad, but you
Yeah.
do it slowly, you do it gradually, because your body rebuilds itself when you make a change in habits, and you got to give your body time to rebuild itself to
Yeah.
a different situation.
Yeah, and
I
that's why
think.
there's supplementation, right? That's why you have your Udo's oils and you have what you have out there, because it is hard for people to eat that way, be disciplined that way, even have, just we're not taught health, right? We're not the
Yeah.
government's not teaching health, and so we're, so
Yeah,
having
even I'll give you another example. You want to eat seeds and nuts. That's where oils come from. And these oils, you want to get organic seeds and nuts. You don't want them roasted. You don't want them salted. You want them the way they hang on the tree. So and some people say, well, I have a hard time digesting seeds and nuts. So what you do is you take the seeds and nuts, you put them in water for 8 to 24 hours. Then you dump the water, and then you find that those seeds and nuts have become quite a lot easier to digest, because in seeds and nuts, there are molecules that inhibit digestion. And they're there so that the seed won't sprout until there's enough water. So when there's enough water, then these things get dissolved out of the seed and nut, and then the seed and nut grows. Well, you can do that in terms of eating them too. You dissolve out those inhibitory substances, and then seeds and nuts become much easier to eat. In terms of the oil, actually, the reason you make the oil is because I can't get optimum intake from just eating seeds and nuts. Now, some people may be able to, but I've actually tried it and I couldn't do it. So I eat seeds and nuts and I use the oil. And I add the oil to whatever foods. I actually dip broccoli in tahini, and the tahini oil, I dump it and I put my oil in it because it's a better oil. And then I dip my veggies in that and eat them like that. Like, it's a simple way to do it. And I don't have any dishes to wash. So I'm kind of lazy that way. So like, why do I need to wash dishes?
so
But the idea is always take time to make the change. Could be anywhere from 6
sure,
months to 2 years.
sure, yes,
So you
yeah,
don't just go cold turkey from from a diet where everything is fried to to a diet where everything is completely raw.
And what about animals and animal fat and the oils that come from animals and that in someone's diet, which is most people? So how do you address that with people eating an animal diet? They have to cook the meat. You know, they're not going to eat raw meat for the most part.
Well, all animals that eat meat eat the meat raw,
Sure.
other than human beings. That's just
Sure.
I'm just saying, right?
Sure. Right.
So the idea, and there are in traditions, raw hamburger is a normal meal in Europe in some places. Prosciutto is raw.
Right.
You know, in some places they bury fish and ferment them and then eat them raw. So there's so raw meat is not a weird thing.
Sure. Sushi
Except in North America, right? So, and so there are two issues. One is plant-based is associated with longer life and better health than animal-based, and the research now is pretty clear about that. I know there are some people who eat only raw meat. In fact, some of the carnivores eating raw meat in North America too, right? Thing is, you pay a price for the processing. You pay something for cooking. Cooking, you lose some of the health benefits. To what extent can you do it? That's the Russian roulette question. I call it the Russian roulette question. What can I get away with? And the truth is, you never get away with anything, even if you don't notice. You know, if you take a sublethal dose of cyanide, you may not notice, but that doesn't mean things haven't been done in your body that are not good for you, right? So from that perspective, you know, you got to start where you are. You got to go step by step, and you want to head in the direction of fresh, whole, raw, organic. And if I was eating meat, I would find a way that it was, number one, it's like meat is very contaminated. So that's one of the reasons why most people cook it. If the meat's not contaminated, eating it raw is not a problem. It's actually way easier to digest. If you eat sushi, right? Sushi's raw. Sashimi is raw. They just cut it, but they make sure that it's not contaminated. And it's a big deal, right? And the Japanese are the people with the longest life expectancy of any of the developed countries. Japan.
Right.
They eat raw dead fish. First time I heard that, I had a Japanese professor, and he decided to take us out for sushi. And, you know, my thought was, I can't believe it. They eat dead raw fish. You know, that was 10 years before I became very fond of it. I don't eat it now because now the fish is so contaminated. Now, in terms of the fats in animals, you know, the seal, whale, walrus, salmon, some of the other northern fish, they're very rich in omega-3 derivatives. So you can get your essential fatty acids from some of those animals. But beef, pork, lamb, and dairy, they have more saturated, a little bit of monounsaturated, a little bit of omega-6, usually very little omega-3. If you've optimized your intake of omega-3 and omega-6, saturated fats, any other saturated or monounsaturated fats you get, they're just fuel to burn. And when you eat them, they actually suppress appetite, so it's easier to stay normal weight if you're cutting out the carbs that increase your blood sugar. Then that could be a problem, then get driven into the cells, then get turned into fat, and then get you hungry again. So they tend to, so carbs do that. Carb addiction is a problem that leads to overweight. It's hard to become overweight when you're on a ketogenic diet that emphasizes fats over carbs. Now, there's still a lot of controversial. There's some people who love their carbs, but there's other reasons why fats are better food. But you got to make your fat intake around the 2 essential fatty acids that you want to optimize, and make that your first thing. That's the kingdom of heaven that you have to look for first in the fats arena, right? So first get the essentials right, and then everything else becomes easier after that.
Yeah. Well, how much? So, if someone was to try the Udo's oils, like how much a day would you need if you were on the? Let's say you're on a really healthy diet. Maybe you do eat a little bit of meat. Maybe it's grass fed or whatever. Yeah. But you're essentially healthy. How much oil would you consume a day of your oils?
Well, it depends on body weight and other factors, obviously what's in your diet. But the way to measure it, the easiest way to measure it is by your skin. If your skin is dry, you're not getting enough of the right kind of fat, because omega-3 and 6 together form a barrier in the skin against the loss of moisture. But skin gets them last and loses them first, because the inner organs have to have them. You can live with dry skin, so nature says skin gets them when all the other organs have enough. So we measure optimum by skin feel, okay? And depending on what you eat will determine how much you need to get it to that level. For a tablespoon per 50 pounds of body weight in winter, less than that in summer. In winter, you burn more for energy and for warmth, and the omega-3s actually keep you warm in winter. They make you much more cold tolerant, which is really cool, and they come from polar regions. In summer, you don't need as much because you're not burning as much for energy. So I use about 4 tablespoons in winter, and in summer maybe 2 or 3. But the easiest way to do it is different for different people. Skin feel. If your skin is soft, smooth, and velvety, you're getting enough. But if you're also using a lot of soap on your skin, then you're going to need more to get to that level, because you keep washing it off your skin.
So for someone like me who lives in Costa Rica, would I need to even have the supplementation of the oil?
Essential oils? What is your source of omega-3 in Costa Rica?
Well, I mean, I do consume grass-fed meat. I do consume...
what kind of meat?
What kind of meat? Grass-fed beef.
Grass-fed, yeah. Okay.
Yep. That's probably the main source. The essential, is that in, I don't even know, is it in, like, there's obviously fruits that, like avocado, right? Doesn't that have, so what else?
Has a very small amount of omega-3 in it.
Sure.
If I was living in Costa Rica, I would be taking my oil with me. And that's just because
I don't see your oil in the stores here.
No, you have to have it shipped in.
Yeah.
I know. And it's the reason why I haven't been to Costa Rica, is because I never was sent down there to give any talks.
Gotcha.
Or you can ship in flax. Flax has omegas, is the richest, easily available source of omega-3s. But then you have to blend them, grind them up, because the seed coat is really hard. And if you eat the whole seeds, they'll go through you, and you can plant them and they will grow. Yeah. So because the seed's job is to make another plant, not to feed you. So
essentially you're saying I'm deficient in omega-3 and 6s on my diet here.
I don't know. When you don't get them, your body conserves them. Okay. But the amounts, there's a little bit in avocado, but it's small. It's like less than 5%. Okay. And there's other oils in avocado, and avocado is great food. I love them. I eat them every day. They probably shipped up here from Costa Rica.
Maybe. Yeah. Or Mexico.
Anyway, but there's a little bit in walnuts, but a very small amount, a lot of omega-6. So the ratio between them is also important. And there's a little bit in canola or rapeseed or anything like that that might grow down there. I don't know if it does.
Well, hold on. I have a question about
Mhm.
canola oil, because that
Yeah,
that one gets a really bad reputation. Because that I've
yeah,
heard a lot of bad things about canola oil, and someone at one point said it was Canadian oil low acid. That's what it stands for,
yeah.
canola.
Low erucic acid. Yeah,
Okay, so let's. I know I'm cutting you off, but I really want to talk about canola for a second. And
yeah,
is it healthy? It's in so many of the foods on the shelves and
yeah.
markets. And so, what is canola oil, and is
Well,
it
the
healthy?
reason it has a bad reputation is that somebody put on the internet and went viral saying that canola oil was oil that was used to oil machine parts. And any oil can be used to oil machine parts. So I'm not saying that's never happened. But the problem with canola oil is the same problem with all the other oils that you find in plastic bottles on the shelf in all the stores, which is it's been treated with sodium hydroxide, with phosphoric acid, then bleached and then heated to frying temperature and damaged by that. That's why I don't use it. If it was made with health in mind, it wouldn't taste very good because some people tried to do that because it has something called glucosinolates in it, and they have this peppery taste that you don't want in oils, basically. Okay, but so it's not worse than other oils. It just got a worse reputation. But it's cheap, so people use it to dilute other oils. Sometimes you can buy olive oil, and that olive oil has been diluted with canola or with soybean oil, which is the other very, widely available oil. And then they lie to you about it. So there's that issue as well. So soybean has a little bit of omega-3 in it as well, and hemp seed has a little bit of omega-3 in it as well. So you can get a little bit, but the ratio is hard to get right if you're not doing something with flax or chia seed. Chia seed also has very high omega-3, but you have to blend those to get the oil out. Otherwise, if you don't blend them, then you won't get the oil.
So, what would be if you would say this is the worst oil on the shelf and this is the best oil on the shelf? And if, let's say, your oil is not available, what would you say is the worst oil and what is the best oil on the shelf?
They're all worst. The more omega-6 and omega-3 they have in them, the more damaged they are. All the oils in plastic bottles, all the colorless, odorless, tasteless oils, they've already been fried. I wouldn't touch one of them with a 10-foot pole. So they should be in glass. And the best, I don't know what to tell you. Flax oil is not balanced. Can you get flax oil down there?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not balanced. So then you take sunflower seeds with it. Okay. Then because the flax will get you the omega-3s, sunflower seed only has omega-6s, but no omega-3s. So you can play with that and get the balance right. That's where I would go. And is the oil in plastic or in glass? Most of the flax oil is probably in plastic.
Yeah, it's in plastic here. Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is that plastic swells when you put oil in it, and then plastic leaches into oil. And there's a lot of issues now about plastics and microplastics, and from all the foods in plastic that we need to be looking at that at some point.
Well, this has been it's been a fascinating round two, and I'm curious as we come to the close here. What is it you're most excited about? I know you get the book coming out. What are you most excited about right now that you got going on?
Well, I think I'm working on two things. One is total health based in nature and human nature. And the other one is human nature as a teachable field. We've been here for 200,000 years, and the two most important things that we have and that we think about, we have never formally turned into a teachable field. That's how stupid we are. That's the most important thing we have, right? And, the reason why we have wars is because we don't know that peace is sitting inside of us calling, hey, come on home. Hey, come on home, right? And we get into all of the interactions. We are living reaction instead of living in response to things. And we don't live in response to things because we don't know who we are, so we don't know what we need to respond with, right? So that's like huge. So I'm working on that. I don't know why anybody's done it. If you go on the internet, on Google, and look at human nature, it's just garbage there. There's nothing good there. There's nothing useful there. It's just a bunch of professors thinking about thinking about thinking. so that's the one. And then total health, based in nature and human nature. If you think about it, health was not invented either by the medical profession or the government or the pharmaceutical industry or the doctors or the lawyers. Health was invented by nature, by life in nature. And the only way you can really be healthy is to live in line with nature and your nature. And there are 10 pieces to that. And each one of those is different, has a different name, has a different nature, a different function, needs a different kind of attention on a regular basis, goes off in a different way in response to a different kind of intervention. If you get all 10 of those in line, then you'll have total health. And some of those things are beyond death. So some of those things will never die. So you even have your eternal life in that, right? That's how you get eternal health, comes from eternal life, except it's not life life is, but awareness is even more eternal because energy still changes, right? Can't destroy it, but it changes form. And if you go off on one of those, then there's going to be health problems that are the result of getting out of line with that. So when you get back in line, that's the cure for the illness that comes from getting out of line. So I'm working on that, and I love that I get to do it. I mean, in a way, I'm glad that humans are so stupid that they haven't done it for 200,000 years, so because I get to do it. Right?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to read about and hear about your findings and teachings. And we'll have to get you on another round when you have these findings. And in the meantime, How can people find you now? How can they work with you or find your new book?
If you go on Google and put in Udo Erasmus /podcasts, there are some of the podcasts that I've done on different topics. If you go on my website, udoerasmus.com, some of the podcasts are there as well. I have a YouTube channel, Udo Erasmus. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm not hard to find. And my name is so weird that if you get the spelling right and you put it in Google, I show up on the first page every time. Udo Erasmus, right? I always had a problem with my name. Oh God, I wish I was called Jack Smith. Wanted to fit in like a teenager, right? And now it's like, what a gift! I end up on the first page on every Google search if you get my name right. Oh, thank you. Now I have to thank the parents that I cursed for giving me that name.
Right. You find out later. Udo. Udo. That's awesome. Number one. Yeah. That's great. Well, hey, Udo, thanks for coming back on. Really appreciate you having, this wisdom droppings of all your life's experiences and the stuff you're still researching, which is really exciting to me. Lifetime learner, continue to learn and evolve. So
wisdom. Did you say wisdom droppings? Did you say wisdom droppings?
That's what came to me. Wisdom droppings.
Is that like intelligent shit?
Yeah, it's like shit that's useful.
Wisdom droppings. Wisdom droppings.
Yeah, kind of like psilocybin. It grows in shit, but it can be really powerful for people.
Yeah. It's good shit.
It's good shit. Exactly. Well, Thanks so much, my friend. Appreciate you coming back, and
all right,
have you back on again soon.
All right. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you for checking out Entrepreneurs in Recovery podcast. We are so appreciative that you are here. Make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe to the show on YouTube. Leave a review on iTunes and Spotify so more people can find the show. Once again, thank you so much. We have great episodes and content come out in the future. Thank you for being here. Have a blessed day.